because I love this program, so I want to save it if we can. All right, we're ready to go if you're ready to go. Everybody's
Okay.
still seeing what you're supposed to see? You still see Alan?
No.
Oh, crap. Okay. Oh, sorry. All right, hold on a minute. I got to figure out where you went. Hold on a minute. I got to find him.
Is he back?
Is he back?
Yes, he's back.
Yes.
Right. You're ready, Alan.
So should I start from the beginning?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. So here we are. So again, I apologize for all the delays, guys. Hopefully, and I would like this to be interactive. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So science of Christmas. Now, you would think of Christmas as a religious holiday, and it certainly is. But there is some science that goes behind it, and some of it science is not able to explain, which is pretty interesting. So what we were talking about was the Star of Bethlehem. So scientists can actually go back, if you have like a really powerful computer, since everything in the sky is very predictable, the rotation of the Earth, the movement of the Earth, the sun, where the stars are, and so on, you could actually take a really powerful computer and go back in time thousands of years to see what was happening at the sky at a certain time. So what they did was they did that basically, and unfortunately, there was nothing that really stood out as an extra bright star. So there are things that can happen in the sky sort of fleetingly. And when I say that, it's not, and I don't mean like a meteor, like boom, it happens in like a millionth of a second and it's gone. But there are things that could happen in the night sky that only last, say, a week or a month. And one of those things is something called a supernova. And a supernova is an exploding star. And that's something that happens that we can visually see about once every decade or so. Now, nobody would know back then, because they didn't understand the science the way we understand it, that that bright object in the sky was actually... What was that? Sorry.
Nothing. Go ahead.
Okay.
Nothing. Go ahead.
So back then, when people didn't understand science the way we do now and understand astronomy, they would see something like that and consider it miraculous, or maybe it was a guiding light. So what a supernova is a star exploding. And when that happens, it brightens hundreds of thousands of times brighter than it normally is. So even if in the past there was a star that was there that was so dim that nobody would ever really have noticed it, because they didn't have telescopes back then, so a star could brighten. So there's one problem with that theory. Usually when a star explodes, it leaves lots of gas and dust and a signature behind. So when scientists look in that part of the sky, they don't really actually find anything. So they're not really sure if that was the real reason. The other thing is, sometimes when planets align, if there's three planets really close together, if you pointed with a telescope, you'd be able to see that there were three planets, but with your naked eye, you would only see like one bright area in the sky. And that could happen and last only for like about a month or so till the planets separate. So that would be a bright object that normally wouldn't be there. And that happens every so often in the sky also. Another thing is science thought maybe we could look back and find the rotation of certain comets. Now, comets usually last in the sky. Hopefully you guys got a chance to see the last really bright comet a couple of months ago. And it was pretty awesome. It seemed like it was pretty much in the same place night after night. It was really bright. It was very visible. So they were thinking that maybe a comet. So those are pretty much the three things that scientists or astronomers are thinking might have been the answer. But that's one of the things that's not conclusive. So nobody really knows exactly what that was, except for what it says in the religious text. Okay? So another thing about Christmas is we celebrate Christmas on December 25th? Well, it turns out that Jesus wasn't born in December. And the way we know that is I'm just going to read a passage from the Bible, from Luke. It says, as the shepherds were still in the fields with their flocks, this is verse 8, Jesus' birth. It says, Jesus' birth could not have occurred during the cold weather months of winter. Sheep are normally brought into centrally located pens or corrals as the weather turns colder and the rainy season begins, especially at night. So there was this observation that when Jesus was born, that the people who raised the sheep, the shepherds and the sheep, were still out in the field. So we know that it didn't happen in December, because it wouldn't have happened in December. By December comes around, it's too cold for the sheep, it's too cold for the shepherds to stay out, and there's really no food out there in the fields, so they would bring them back in to shelter, and they would shelter them throughout the winter. Okay? So, and the question is, like, why would Luke have mentioned such a detail if it was not to let people know about a certain time reference? So that's one time reference that we know about. So it was a custom among the Jews to send out their sheep to the deserts or wilderness about the Passover and bring them home in the commencement of the first rain. During the time they were out, the shepherds watched them night and day. As the Passover occurred in the spring, and the first rain began early in the month of, I can't read that, March, I'm not sure what that means, which is the answer part, which is beginning of October, November. We find that the sheep are kept out in the open during the whole summer, and these shepherds brought them in around October and November. So the question might be is, we know that Jesus wasn't born in December in the cold weather. Chances are he was born in the summer. Nobody knows exactly when, just because of the references in the Bible. So why was it that we would celebrate the birth of Christ on December 25th? Well, you need to go back into history a little bit and understand that at the time when Jesus was born, people who believed in Christians, people who were Christians, were actually persecuted. And they had to keep the idea that they had that religion as part of their life sort of secret, because they could actually be killed for that, just for being interested in that kind of thing. So it turns out that around the 25th of December is when the winter solstice is. And the winter solstice is a very important time of the year, because up until the winter solstice, the days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And at the winter solstice, the days start to get longer and longer and longer. Now, imagine thousands of years ago, when you didn't understand science and climatology and things like that. You know, you would look out into the fields, you'd see it's getting colder, the days are getting shorter, my crops are not growing. You know, primitive people would start to get really worried that, oh my gosh, what if the sun eventually just disappears, right? So throughout the ages, when the sun started to come back up in the sky and the days last longer, they would have celebrations. And the one celebration is called Saturnalia. And what that is the fact that the days are getting longer and they're able to look forward to warmer weather and growing more crops, and certainly surviving would be a lot easier. So this big festival would happen, and what the Christians did was they started to celebrate the birth of Christ at that same time, so nobody would recognize that they were actually celebrating the birth of Christ while everybody else was celebrating Saturnalia. And even after the persecution ended, that tradition kept going. So this is why we actually celebrate Christmas on the 25th. And it's a little more complicated than that, so that's basically a kind of an overview. Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
I'm not getting any,
I'm
Alan.
I'm not
Okay,
getting
that's
any,
fine.
Alan.
Repeat that, what you were saying about
Oh,
25th. Repeat that.
About what, Conway?
About the 25th, why they celebrate Christmas on the 25th of December.
Okay, so there used to be a festival called Saturnalia, And Saturnalia was a celebration of the days starting to get longer and the warmer weather coming on. So people were able to plant their crops and they would have plenty of food again. So the Christians, rather than being persecuted and celebrating Christ's birthday when he was born, they sort of mixed themselves in with the Saturnalia crowd. They knew that they were celebrating Christ's birth, but nobody else knew it, and they weren't persecuted for it. And once all the persecution sort of ended, they continued that tradition. So that's the reason that we celebrate Christmas basically on the 25th, because it's right at the time of the winter solstice. You get that?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now, like I said, I'm not trying to step on anybody's religious beliefs, because certainly there are people who just believe everything that they take what they read in the Bible, as gospel. And I I certainly am not trying to put that down, and I'm certainly not saying it's wrong, but scientifically, and even in the Bible, it basically tells us that Jesus wasn't born in the wintertime. So what we're doing as scientists, we're going back and trying to figure out why, and historians to try to figure out why. Okay?
Well, and I think, Alan, part of the thing is too, that we take and we look at the event, we place it in our time frame, which places it in the winter time, which we then customize our how we interpret it as being part of the winter. And it'd be interesting. I'm not sure if people in the Southern Hemisphere assume that Christmas is also a cold weather event versus a warm event.
Yeah, because, when it's our winter, it's their summer. So, yeah, I've often wondered things like that. Not so much as far as like Christmas and the religious part of it, but it's just a crazy thing I think of. Up here in the north, when you put a map on the table or you're looking at a book with a map, we always put north as up. And I'll hear, when I used to teach environmental education, kids always thought that north was the top of the earth. Well, there's really no such thing as the top of the earth. The earth is a sphere. That's just our human perception of things. But we live in the northern hemisphere. I always wondered if people in the southern hemisphere put the South Pole up when they're looking at a map. Anybody have any ideas on that?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to go to Australia.
Has anyone ever been to, I think, is Australia in the southern hemisphere?
Yeah.
Well, they say what, that the toilets flush in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere?
That's not really, that's not really true, but yeah.
Yeah, that's called the Coriolis effect.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And a lot of the way a toilet flushes is basically has to do with the shape of the toilet. But when you look at storms and you look at convection currents in the atmosphere, they are opposite in the southern hemisphere. So that's one. I guess that's where that whole thing kind of came from.
Yeah.
All right. So no more questions on that.
See, we're learning something all the time.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to share something right now. Hold on. Let's see if we can get this to go. Can you
Now, don't push our luck. You did. Woo! Everybody see
Can you guys see the picture
Alan's
of the pine?
computer screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So another interesting thing about Christmas is we tend to put up trees and decorations and things like that. And kind of the tradition of that started, imagine living even further north in North Carolina. And, I'm from New York, so I know that the winters are longer up there. But imagine living in Maine or places like that. So a long time ago, people didn't really have, they obviously didn't have computers and things to keep them busy over the winter like we do. So things started to really get boring and dull, and everything was brown and gray, and they really longed for color. So what people did was they'd go out into the woods, and they'd find evergreen trees, and they would make wreaths, and they would bring them into the house. They would take the the boughs from the evergreen trees, and they would decorate with them just to give a little bit of color. And, you know, then they started traditions of, you know, making things out of hand, making things by hand, you know, out of wood and so on, and hanging it and decorating and so on. So that's kind of where the whole idea of decorating for Christmas came from. And I'm just going to go over some of the plants that are really in the whole Christmas tradition. Now, the trees that we decorate with are evergreens. There are lots of different kinds of evergreens. I'm just going to talk about a couple of different ones. We have what are called pine trees. And the way you distinguish a pine tree from other evergreens is pine trees, their leaves are needles. But the needles are in bundles. If you look at the branch on this tree, you'll see that there's two or three needles or leaves attached with this sort of membrane that holds them together. And I'm sure you guys have played with, you know, pine trees and you pull them off, the leaves off and stuff like that. And you could see, you could actually identify a pine tree by how many needles, how many needles are in a bundle, and how long the needles are, and so on. Okay, so that's a pine tree. Now there are spruce trees which are also evergreen. You notice that the leaves are individuals. They're not in a bundle, and they actually mostly point up rather than down. So spruce trees are one of the trees that you can, if you go to the store and you buy a Christmas tree, this is one of the types of trees you're getting. You don't usually get pine trees that often, but I do know people who actually go out and cut pine trees for Christmas. So the next one is a fir tree. Now you might think that a fir tree and a spruce tree look very similar, and they do. But if you look at the way, let me see if I go to the next one here. Yeah. You notice how the leaves, instead of being all the way around the stem, they're sort of in a plane, you know, left and right. They're flat, they're going out. The other thing is, if you touched a spruce tree, you would know it because the needles are very sharp and pointy and stiff. And the way I used to tell kids that if you want to know if it's the difference between fir tree and a spruce tree, is you go to shake its hand. And if you grab the branch and it hurts you, basically it sticks you, it's a spruce tree. And a fir, you think of a fir as a friendly fir. You could actually touch a fir tree and lay in it, and you could actually use it as bedding if you wanted to. And it's really soft. So those are just three of the different trees that people use for Christmas. Now, holly is not a pine tree. It is an evergreen. It's not in that family. But you notice it has broad leaves, and they're flat. They actually have thorns on them, and they have red berries. And holly doesn't really have any like other significance other than it's evergreen, and it has these beautiful red berries, and it's a great thing to decorate with. And lots of people do use holly as decoration. Oops, sorry, I jumped ahead there, guys. All right, let me move my other thing. I actually have my other computer up so I can see. Green China. Okay. We're going to get to the legend of Santa in a minute. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is, and of course this is not specific to Christmas, but it is specific to winter. And even songs about Christmas talk about, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, right? So I'd like to talk a little bit about snow. And really how beautiful it is if you look closely at it. Now, most snowflakes are six-sided. And that has to do with the fact that snow is made from water. And water is H2O, and the molecular signature of H2O is exactly the same, basically. And whenever it crystallizes, it always goes into 6 points. And I'm going to actually show you, if I can find it, I wanted to show you guys a video about that in a couple of minutes. But You may have heard the story that there's never been two snowflakes that are the same. Well, that's actually true. Even if you took a snowflake that looks very, very similar to another one, at the molecular level, there have never been two snowflakes the same. Now, that's a pretty brave statement, considering the Earth has been around for billions of years and it's been snowing. Like, it's impossible to count the amount of snowflakes that have landed on the Earth, not to mention all the snowflakes that have landed on other planets. But at a molecular level, two snowflakes can't be the same, even if visually they look the same. Now, at the center of every snowflake is either a particle of dust or pollen or dirt or something, because ice crystals can't form in the atmosphere without something to form around. Now, when I was a kid, I used to grow chemical crystals because I think crystals are just gorgeous. You know, if you've ever broken open a geode and looked inside, it's just amazing. So I used to grow chemical crystals, and to make a chemical crystal, you need what's called a seed crystal, because crystals don't generally just grow for no reason or nothing. So at the center of every snowflake, there is to precipitate onto. This happens way up in the atmosphere. The other thing that's interesting is, you know, when it rains in the summertime, there's a good chance that the rain way up in the clouds started as a snowflake or as ice because it's really cold in the upper atmosphere. And when it gets closer to the Earth where it's warmer, it just melts and it turns into rain. But depending on the conditions that the snowflake forms in, you can get different shapes. Now, this one here doesn't look like it's six-sided, but it really is. If you look at it, each one of those three major sides has 2 points. So I'm going to show you, or I'm going to tell you, what some of the conditions are. So let me just read this to you. It says, generally six-sided hexagonal crystals are shaped in high clouds. Needles or flat six-sided crystals are shaped in the middle height clouds, and a wide variety of six-sided shapes are formed in low clouds. Colder temperatures produce snowflakes with sharper tips on the sides of the crystals and may lead to branching snowflake arms. So, as we go through these pictures, I'm going to, if a snowflake forms at between 25 and 32 degrees Fahrenheit, you usually get a thin hexagonal plate. If it forms between 21 and 25 degrees, you usually get needles. Now, I don't know if anybody had a chance to go out and look at the lawn this morning or went outside with the frost on the ground, but I love frost because frost is crystals, and I love crystals. So I was actually out this morning, and it was pretty cold this morning, and most of the dew actually turned into needle-shaped frost. And if you really took your time to spent the time paying attention, you can actually tell pretty much what temperature it was that they were formed at, okay? So believe it or not, you could actually get a snowflake that's a hollow column. And that happens between 14 and 21 degrees Fahrenheit. And there are things called sector plates that form between 10 and 14 degrees. So I just want to go through these pictures really quick, and then I want to show you a video. No matter what you think about the science of snowflakes, you got to admit that they're pretty awesome as far as the way they look. And again, even though these are six-sided, they're all completely different shapes. Now, here's one of those columns, which is a pretty cool-looking crystal. I've never seen one of those in real life. I do want to show you that you notice that most of these pictures look like they have hair in them. So the person who takes these pictures, what they do is they take a glove, a black glove, and they put it out on a snowy day, and when the snowflake falls on it, they actually move it into underneath their microscope to take the picture. So that little hair right there is actually somebody's glove. And we saw something like that. Now this type of let's see, I'm trying to find the name of these. There's actually a name for this. It basically looks like a bunch of granular crystals together. And I believe these are formed, like the original snowflake starts to form at a certain temperature, and then it passes through the atmosphere, and other crystals start to form on them. And that's the end of that. So let's see if I could find the video for you. There you go. See if I could share that. A window, let's see. Oh, it's not coming up. Let's see. All right, I just switched out. Can you guys see that picture of a snowflake on that web
No.
page?
Not right now. You have to share your screen again.
Yeah, but it's not giving me that choice. I got that up, that up. Science, nope. Let's see if I share that. Did it change?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, good. Great. So I'm gonna make this larger. And what this is actually sort of a slow motion video of snowflakes forming. I have my audio on my computer turned off, but can you guys hear music?
No.
No, there's supposed to be music to this. Let's see if I turn mine on.
Well, if you turn that on, we're going to get all kinds of feeds on the phone,
Leave it off.
too. Do you want to describe what this is just showing the different kinds of crystals growing?
Yeah, and depending on the situation, depending on the temperature or whatever, each crystal is going to form different.
It's
Now,
just
these are
amazing.
obviously formed, these were done in a laboratory. I remember one time I was showing this and somebody thought that that somebody actually figured out a way to follow an ice crystal up in the sky down to the ground while it was forming. This was actually done on a slide underneath the microscope. But this is basically the process that happens up in a cloud. And what happens when all those molecules, if you think about it, a cloud is made of water. Water weighs 8.25 pounds per gallon. And a cloud, an average cloud, a big cloud, could weigh 100,000 tons. And you might wonder, how does that stay up in the air if it's that huge and large, right? Well, it turns out that those little tiny particles, it's almost like smoke particles of water, are being uplifted individually and held in place by currents in the atmosphere. But when they start to come together, they start to get too heavy for the atmosphere to hold, and that's how precipitation forms. So the same thing happens. Once they start to come together as a crystal and more molecules, and the crystal gets larger and larger, it gets too heavy and it can't stay in the atmosphere. Let me close this. All right, can you guys see the next one, which is a picture of two doors?
Yes.
Can you see that with wreaths on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. It's hard for me to tell what you're looking at on my screen. So this is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's actually pretty funny. A couple of scientists put together this video to try to explain some of the things about Christmas and why they happen in a scientific way. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but some of it's pretty interesting. And the funny part is when he talks about Santa Claus traveling around the globe, and if you count how many houses Santa Claus has to go to versus how much time he has to get there, he would spend like, you know, a tenth of a second at each house. So anyway, let's watch this. It's kind of interesting.
You may need to interpret it so they won't be able to hear it, because they won't be able to hear it.
All right, you know what? I'm going to have to turn on my sound because that's the best part of this, okay? Let's see if it works.
So mute your, oh, wait a minute, how is that gonna work? We aren't gonna hear it. I don't think. We can try.
Can you hear?
And I'm Professor Alan Black. Today, Steve and I are going to show you modern science as explained some of the
No.
That's not working.
We can send out the link. What if you send out the link? So watch it. Oh, you know what? Wait a minute. Let's see. Let's do the link. No, because I'm already sharing. You know what? Let me try it. How would I do that? Is this called the Science of Christmas? Let me see if I can find it on YouTube. Problem is, I'm already. Hold on a second. So everybody's going to lose the first second. Can you hear me, Alan? Alan, you're muted. I can't hear you. Are you there? Did I lose everybody?
Yes.
All right. Yes.
We're still here,
Yeah.
Jackie.
Okay, let me see.
So it's the Auckland University of Technology.
All right, let me see if I can play it on my screen and get everybody to see it.
Okay.
We're really stretching ourselves here, folks. That's all I can say. Did you see that come up? Did you see that come up and hear that come up, everybody?
No.
No.
All right, hold on a minute. Alan, I'm going to have to take you off of my share while I show this, I think. Tell you, this is stretching my technical ability big time. Hold on, how do I do this now? I gotta go back to here. Share. I guess I got to get this started. Let me pull this over to another window. All right, let's see if that works.
Can everybody else hear me while she's talking to herself?
Funny.
We can have a conversation rather than
All right, do you see that yet? Do you see the YouTube of the two front doors?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let me hit go and let me see if it works. You hear it? Give me a thumbs up, Val. Do you hear it?
Hello, everybody. Welcome.
You don't hear it. Okay, hold on. Let me try something else. I got to go into advanced settings. I'm actually getting the neck of this, I think. Hold on a second. Hold on. I'm almost there. All right, let me go back over here. All right, let's
The
try it
science
again.
team at AUT University. I'm Professor Steve Pointing.
All right, got it.
And I'm Professor Alan Blackman. And today, Steve and I are going to show you how modern science explains some of the unanswered mysteries of Christmas. So you may be thinking, how does Santa get around the whole world in one night? Let's say that Santa needs to visit every one of the 2 billion children in the world. The average home has 2.5 children, so that means he has to visit around 800 million homes. Because it becomes night at different times all around the globe, he actually has 48 hours to deliver all the presents. So that means he needs to get to around 5 houses every single second.
What was that?
We can hear but can't see it.
Well, I appreciate hearing it. Can't see it. I
All right,
appreciate
let me
it.
try it again. Let me try one more thing. I'll tell you, this is stretching my ability. There's no doubt about it. Here. How's that?
Nearly the speed of light. NASA is studying this to use in their rocket engines, but it looks like Santa has already beaten.
Yeah. So
Audio is bad.
all right, I agree with Alan. We'll just share the link with you.
Right.
All right, let me figure out how to get him back on here. I am not Krista. Hold on a minute. Let me find you, Alan. Let's see if I get the right one. You see Alan again, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're back.
Oh man, guys, I can't apologize enough for this disaster, but I don't know. Sometimes technology works, sometimes it doesn't.
All I can say is we're showing ingenuity at work here, Alan. So you know what? It is what it is.
Were you able to share the link?
I didn't yet, but I will.
Okay.
But if I,
So, guys, anyway, so it's actually a pretty fun, it's an interesting video. It's these two professors who talk about the different parts of different things about Christmas and the science behind them. And like I said, it's kind of tongue in cheek because most of the stuff they talk about really hasn't been invented yet, like warp drives and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions?
Alan.
So,
go wait, hold
Alan.
on. Louise, did you have a question for Alan?
I have a question for him because I had never thought about the different kind of Christmas trees. And I know I have a tree that has red birds on it. And I guess I was called a holly tree, and I didn't know whether I was calling the right thing or not. I didn't know it could be called, my point is, if it can be called a part of a Christmas tree, I was not aware of that. I knew it's full of red buds. And I saw it was called a holly tree. And it could be called part of a Christmas tree. I had not thought about it in that way.
No, so a holly, you're right, it's called a holly. And nobody uses them that I know of as a Christmas tree. But they do use them to make wreaths and other decorations because of the red berries. So, yeah, you're right. It's definitely not a Christmas tree. One of the reasons is, you can't even touch the tree because it has lots of thorns on it. So it's not something you'd want to be hanging ornaments on or somebody leaning into it. So you really wouldn't want a holly tree in your house for a Christmas tree.
Okay, I think. And another question, then I'm going to be Susan. I'll hold you up.
No problem.
were you able to get in touch with the folks? Because like I tell you, I know I was late. So I was just, since you were on the line, I won't hold you up longer. Were you able to get in touch with them?
It was too late. They already
we're gonna.
I don't understand what you were saying.
Because Louise, I'll have Alan will give you a call back later, or I will, about that, because we're recording this on YouTube, and I just want to make sure that we're not disclosing any personal information.
Okay then.
So
okay.
then,
Thank you for your time and your kindness.
We're not going to ignore you, Louise. We're just going to answer it at a different time. That's all. Does anybody else
I
have any
appreciate it. I
questions
understand.
about
I thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions for Alan?
Let me ask him one more question
about this program.
I need to ask him one more question, Jackie. I've always heard talk of running cedar, and I know a lot of folks use it for decoration and make wreaths out of that. But that's just it's underground running cedar. So I was wondering how is that classified?
Were you able to hear that, Jackie?
Yeah, do you know anything about running cedar? She said, I think what she meant was that she's heard that you can make wreaths and stuff out of running cedar, but she's under the impression that it grows underground. So she's questioning that. Did I say that right, Louise?
Well, yeah, it grows underground. It has, it grows underground and it spreads.
Yeah, I've never heard of a tree called a running cedar. I'm sorry.
Alan, I think you need to mute your computer one more time and just leave your phone unmuted. They're getting some feedback.
Yeah, for some reason, I think my phone died because it's not showing up anymore.
Oh, more technology issues. All right. So Alan, you were mentioning about your next science program in December.
Yes, I think it's December, right?
Yes. That rings a bell. Let me just look at it. Yes.
Hopefully we'll have all of this worked out by then and it'll be able to deliver by then.
I did want to bring up another thing that we're doing is on the 1st and 2nd, we're doing caroling in our parking lot on Tuesday, the 1st, and in the Siler City parking lot on Wednesday, the 2nd. And the way it relates to this also is that we are going to have our holiday arrangements that you can make. And we're going to be having that available at 12:15 on those days in those locations. If you bring a container to put your arrangement in, you'll get the foam from us, and then you'll get a bag of the greenery and a bag of the other things you can use to make your arrangement at home, and then you'll have to take it home and make it at home. So speaking of your greenery and holly and all that kind of stuff, we're going to make that available. So if you want to do that, let us know so we can have you on the list. Anything else, Alan? Okay, we're glad everybody was here. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience as we got this all working. Take care.